Good afternoon, and welcome to the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation Meet the Scientists monthly webinar series. I'm Dr. Jeff Borenstein, BBRF's President and CEO. Today, Dr. Marc Weintraub will present Improving Psychotherapy for Mood Disorders. BBRF is the world's largest private funder of mental health research grants supporting transformative discoveries in order to develop improved treatments, cures, and methods of prevention. The high quality of the research we fund is made possible by the BBRF Scientific Council. This group of 193 prominent mental health researchers reviews each grant application and selects the most promising ideas with the greatest potential to lead to breakthroughs. The Scientific Council guides the foundation to fund creative and impactful basic, translational, and clinical research relevant to the whole spectrum of mental health. One reason that research funded by BBRF has such great impact is because we do not limit our focus to one illness or condition. Since 1987, the foundation has awarded $462 million to fund more than 6,700 research grants around the world and across a broad spectrum of brain conditions, including addiction, ADHD, anxiety, autism, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, depression, eating disorders, OCD, post-traumatic stress, schizophrenia, as well as suicide prevention. Today, I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Marc Weintraub. Dr. Weintraub is an assistant professor of psychiatry at UCLA Semel Institute for Neuroscience and Human Behavior and David Geffen School of Medicine. He was a 2023 Young Investigator. Our webinar will begin with Dr. Weintraub's presentation, which will then be followed by Q&A. To submit your questions, please use the Questions tab on the control panel on your screen. Feel free to submit the questions at any time. Following the presentation, I'll ask as many as possible in the time allotted. And now I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Weintraub. Marc, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you for having me. So, as was mentioned, I'll be presenting the work that we're doing here at UCLA to improve psychosocial treatment for mood and psychotic disorders. Just to show some of the funding that we've had to do the work that I'll be presenting today, as well as some of the current projects that we're working on, have our funders listed on the left, have some pharmaceutical support that comes from Filament Health, and no conflicts of interest to declare. Here's a bit of a roadmap for us. I want to share a little bit about some of the work that I did getting started in this field, family-focused therapy for schizophrenia and mood disorders. I'm then going to present on a multifamily cognitive behavioral therapy that we've developed for adolescents with serious mental illness symptoms, and then talk about a newer line of research that we're quite excited about involving psychedelic-assisted therapy. So as I was mentioning, when I was getting involved in this field, kind of the research lineage that I've come from is a lineage that studied family therapies for psychotic and mood disorders, and the specific modality is family-focused therapy. Family therapies have been a real important and prominent part of treating serious mental illness for 50 plus years, and one particular evidence-based treatment is family-focused therapy for bipolar disorder and mood disorders. And that's something that David Miklowitz has done a lot of work in, who's been my postdoctoral and faculty mentor at UCLA. And in graduate school, I was working on a culturally informed family therapy for schizophrenia. These are both, as I was mentioning, evidence-based treatments. They're skills-based treatments that involve education about the disorders. They also involve practices of communication and problem solving. And these were treatments that initially were meant for broad spectrum of individuals with schizophrenia. David Miklowitz had expanded it to first adults with bipolar disorder, and we've kind of worked down the age spectrum to adolescents with bipolar disorder, individuals high risk for bipolar disorder, and for youth with difficulties more generally. And with Amy Weissman, Dave Mamani, we worked on expanding this treatment to individuals who are Spanish speaking, also incorporating other elements into the family-focused therapy, including what we called family collectivism, understanding the family dynamics and working to tailor the treatment to particular family dynamics, and also including a module of spirituality or religiosity, taking into account various people's or families' religious or spiritual orientations. And through these different experiences, we take a systems approach, thinking of the individual as situated within an environment around them. So we're not looking to just treat the identified patient, we're taking an approach that incorporates what is happening around them, most specifically in the family, but it might also be in their peer groups, in their school environment, or whatever else it might be, and thinking of what we call the psychosocial causal or maintenance factors. One common maintenance factor is family conflict, something that can increase the likelihood of mood or psychotic relapse, and on the other hand has been shown to improve psychiatric outcomes if we're able to reduce family functioning. Although, to be clear, this is something that's a more recent finding and something that I'll share about in just a moment. The idea of what these family-focused therapies are doing is based on the theoretical models that have been established by a large body of psychiatric and psychological work to show that our environments do impact the course of illness, that individuals who are situated in critical or overly involved family environments do have increased likelihoods of mood relapse or psychotic relapse. And so to the extent that we could help create a more harmonious family environment, we've been theorizing that this is a way for us to improve mood outcomes and psychiatric outcomes generally. Now, this isn't something that until more recently we've been able to demonstrate empirically, and in our work here at UCLA in the last few years, we've really been wanting to dissect and kind of pull out what we've believed to be moderate or mediators of mood outcomes. This is among youth with mood disorders who've undergone FFT. Let me walk you through some of these models that are a bit intricate here, but what we see here is that family functioning serves as an important mediator in improving depressive symptoms for individuals who go through our family-focused therapy. The treatment is improving family functioning, and thereby, by virtue of improving family functioning, improving depressive symptoms. Another interesting thing that we've uncovered, and this is something that I was alluding to, that the treatments involve skills and skill practice. And to the extent that families are practicing these skills, we've been theorizing that the more they practice communication skills, the more they work on tangible, concrete problem-solving practices, the more that they would improve outcomes as well. And this is another way for us to, or really one of the first ways for us to demonstrate that that's the case. We have used a mediational model to be able to look at what is happening as predicting an outcome of what this here shows as mood lability or affective lability, that individuals who are practicing more skills, families that are practicing more skills, it's measured by youth and parent skill practice, show greater improvements in their affective lability and also in their mood symptoms as well. So these have been really important and nice ways for us to validate some of the theoretical models that we've developed for, or the field has developed for many, many years, and a way for us to continue to seek to improve and optimize these treatments, for us to be, as we've expected, to double down on the skill practices, specifically of working to improve communication and problem solving, working to create more harmonious family environments to improve mood symptoms and outcomes, and functioning outcomes. Let me take a quick step back just to share more broadly what SMI is, what we mean when we refer to SMI. We refer to serious mental illness as a way of incorporating a variety of different conditions that include bipolar disorders, psychotic spectrum disorders, and persistent or recurrent depression. And these conditions affect about 10 to 12% of the US population. A majority of the individuals who end up experiencing SMI have their first symptoms that emerge in adolescence. And unfortunately, many of these individuals are left out of more general community clinics or treatment programs. A lot of community clinicians feel unprepared to treat these patients, and there's a certain way of, in both the literature and in practice, othering these groups of patients and families, such that it's hard to always get them into treatment, and hard for us to know whether they will respond to treatments that are provided to folks or individuals with what might be considered more garden variety anxiety or depression. Something that we became interested in doing was working to establish or test a certain more inclusive, what we call transdiagnostic treatment for these individuals, and see whether that could be a valuable way of training clinicians to be more willing and prepared to treat these families, and whether they would be a good fit to join for individuals who might have these more common anxiety or less severe depressive conditions. What we've done here at UCLA over the last few years is develop this multi-family group cognitive behavioral therapy. And what we're doing is applying a transdiagnostic cognitive behavioral therapy to adolescents who are at high risk for various serious mental illness symptoms. This is done over 9 sessions. We have teens that participate primarily in a teen room amongst themselves, parents in a parent room over 90 minutes for weekly sessions. This is a curriculum that's based on the Unified Protocol for Adolescents that was developed for emotional disorders generally, anxiety and depressive disorders, and expanding this to SMI youth. These are high school aged youth. So as I was mentioning, teens and parents are separate for the first 75 to 80 minutes. We have the teens and parents come back together for the final 10 to 15 minutes to review the content, the skills that were practiced, and a game plan for the next week. And what the treatment involves over these couple months is first working with them to build some motivation, build rapport. We then get into behavioral skills, specifically positive activity scheduling, looking to, as best as we can, start to accrue some positive emotional experiences. And then we get into what we call opposite action for unhelpful behaviors. If individuals are avoiding or steering away from things that would be helpful for them, such as school, such as social communication, we help to provide step-by-step practices and skills to get them to approach those helpful behaviors as opposed to avoiding. And if individuals are approaching, whether it's conflict with parents or with peers, we seek to provide some structured opposite action to help them pull back, to communicate more effectively, and to manage some emotional experiences. And it starts it is helpful to do that through emotional identification and communication, which we teach as well. We then go into some cognitive skills that involve awareness of thoughts themselves, identifying particular traps that we might fall into that are commonly called cognitive distortions. Common ones include all or nothing, black and white thinking, jumping to conclusions, and then modifying those unhelpful thoughts, either creating a different perspective of those thoughts, or creating thoughts that might be more positive or otherwise helpful. And so in testing this multi-family group in 2018, we started with 10 families just to get our feet wet, and then pretty quickly, more than, I guess, stepping into the deep end, we dove right into a large or a pretty big comparator of a bona fide treatment that is a mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. It was a randomized trial of 66 youth that were split between our CBT and our mindfulness groups. In both settings, the parents and teens were involved, as I was describing before. And what we found is that both treatments showed comparable improvements in symptoms and functioning. So our CBT and mindfulness treatments are both helping to improve the youth's psychiatric symptoms and their functioning in day-to-day life. Interestingly, and we don't quite know why, but the CBT was rated as more satisfying by youth and by parents. And we also found the CBT was specifically helpful in improving emotional functioning and regulation at the 3-month follow-up, that it seems to have some durability in continuing to improve emotional functioning and regulation beyond the treatment period. This was 3 months beyond the treatment period. So these were initial promising signs. The treatment seemed to be yielding beneficial outcomes, although I will say one problem that continued to come up was skill practice. I was showing you before with family therapy how important skill practice can be for mood outcomes and affective ability. And we want for the teens and the parents, actually, we encourage both the teens and the parents to practice the skills. It's a way for the parents to model the behavior for the teens. It's also something that is commonly helpful, we believe, for the parents, since many of the parents come in with some degree of affective stress, depressive stress. But many of the teens weren't practicing the skills as often as we wanted. They were practicing less than one skill practice per session. And what we thought as a potential solution is to leverage something that, for better or for worse, teens are having in their hands, well, maybe all the time if there's no intervention otherwise. And so to kind of roll with that, we thought of creating an app. Apps, as I'm sure we all know, it can have wide-ranging functionalities. And we thought, well, we could use it to provide an overview of session content, practice of the skills, monitoring of symptoms. It's also an opportunity for us as clinicians to track patients' progress. We could build in systems within the app to notify participants of their skill practice and gamify various features to reward them. And this was something that was kind of happening in our lab in various ways. We were also working at the same time on an app-enhanced family-focused therapy for youth with mood disorders. So really seeing in these last few years how we might be able to use technologies to improve our psychosocial therapies. And that was the impetus of my National Institute of Mental Health Career Development Award. Phase 1 involved building out an app as an adjunct to that multifamily group CBT, and then examining the acceptability and feasibility of that app. And then phase 2 is conducting a randomized trial to compare that app-enhanced treatment to our group offering without the app, the group offering as we had done in the years prior. So in that phase 1 process, we held 2 focus groups and worked with parents and teens who had previously participated in our groups to understand what it was that prevented them from practicing skills, what might be ways for us to improve their skill practice, build more motivation for skill practice. We iteratively built a mobile app with the various features that I was just describing, and with 31 adolescents and adolescent parent dyads that we enrolled, examined the acceptability and feasibility of this app-enhanced treatment. Just to give you a sense of what the app looks like, here are various parts of the app. Have our homepage here that identifies the to-dos of the week, particular skills that we want them to practice, check-in for them to do weekly. These icons illuminate as they practice the skills, or as they complete them, I should say. Ways to explore the entire app are through various buttons down here, and then we have various gamification features to level up as skills are practiced, and challenges within the group that we set up. Here we have different skills such as thought monitoring, breathing exercises, identifying emotions, scheduling pleasant activities, and then, a way for the participants to review their progress. And this was something that was provided to both the teens and the parents. They all could only see their own personal data. They weren't able to monitor or see anything else within their own family or other participants. And overall, what we saw was that this app-enhanced treatment was rated pretty highly, well liked by teens and parents, or at least these are all on a 10-point scale, certainly passing grades as we look across the board here. The one main caveat is they didn't seem to like the symptom check-in. That might have felt a little bit too assessment oriented and onerous for them. The app-enhanced treatment here in this open trial was also associated with improvements in depression, subclinical psychosis, and global functioning. And importantly, skill practice improved relative to what we saw in our groups without the app. In what we had tested before we had run this trial, it was an improvement about 50%, and skill practice was associated with changes in depression and in global functioning. So it seems like from this open trial, we were on the right track and moved into our phase 2 randomized trial, which involved 60 adolescent parent dyads, 30 in each condition. Again, these are high school aged youth with various SMI diagnoses. And what we saw over the course of the 21-week trial is that the app-enhanced group led to greater improvements in global functioning and in clinical symptoms over what is essentially a 6-month study. So 2 to 3 months of the treatment and then a 3-month follow-up. In this first graph on the left, we see that global assessment, global functioning is improving more quickly in the app-enhanced group at the post-treatment period, and then the non-app group catches up, but there's, as I mentioned, speedier improvement in the app-enhanced group. And then the clinical global impressions were more significantly improved over the length of that 5 or 6 month treatment in the app-enhanced group. There was no main effective treatment condition on adolescent skill practice, meaning that we didn't end up seeing that the two groups were different in skill practice. And that was something that surprised us. We really did expect to see the adolescents in the app-up group practice more skills. Now, I was alluding to this earlier, we expected that the parents would be improved themselves through joining the group. And what we ended up seeing is that it depended. Not every parent did, and that's because some parents presented to the group with pretty minimal depression or anxiety. And those parents stayed about the same. There's this floor effect. There just wasn't anywhere for them to go because they themselves weren't particularly distressed. However, and this was something that was particularly striking to us and really great to see, parents who did present to our groups with, and this was across both treatment groups, the app-up and the treatment as usual group, parents who presented with some amount of psychological distress did improve and improved significantly, and it was also maintained over the 3-month follow-up. We also saw, and this was really compelling for us as well, that parent skill practice was something that was helpful for the youth. We saw that there at least is correlation here of parent skill practice being associated with youth improvements, and it also predicted youth improvements at future time points. One thing that seemed to be, again, a surprise was that the app-up condition did not lead to greater skill practice. And in fact, the skill practice that parents engaged in on the app was less than the skill practice that the parents reported to do in their paper and pencil versions in the non-app group. So it seems like the app in some ways, even though it was well received in the open trial, was not as well received here in this RCT as we would have expected. Our hypothesis is that as we were iterating and creating the app in the open trial, the parents and teens were excited to be able to have their suggestions or catching of bugs fixed relatively quickly, that they were seeing changes happen in real time. And just maybe I suppose, limitation of the science, we were maintaining a pretty fixed app. If there was a significant bug, of course we'd fix it, but we maintained a pretty fixed app in the RCT, and might have made for a less engaging or impactful experience, seeing the app as a relatively static instrument, and something, frankly, that just doesn't happen so much in the tech space as apps are continually modified or improved upon. So next steps here, we're really interested in examining more of what the parent involvement can do, and have proposed a study to the NIH to compare groups with and without the parent component, thinking in part of our orientation to family therapies and inclusion of parents. We really do see this as an opportunity to be able to improve outcomes among adolescents with SMI symptoms. Also curious to see whether the clinician portal might have been a factor in improving functioning among the youth that we saw in the app up condition. So if it wasn't the app on the teens end that was helping so much, it may have been on the clinician's end. We really did seem to find it useful to know what was happening week to week, whether it was a fight in the family or a school stressor, and we're able to bring that into the sessions pretty regularly. And we've also discussed with various folks here locally in the LA and actually Monterey area to begin dissemination efforts to examine acceptability and effectiveness of this treatment in community settings. Alrighty, a bit of a whirlwind. This is a pivot, a big pivot, because this is a very different modality and with a different population. No longer talking about adolescents, and now this is psychedelic assisted therapy for adults, more specifically using psilocybin as an adjunct to cognitive behavioral therapy. What is psilocybin? So this has become a relatively popular area in recent years. It comes out of a fungus known as magic mushrooms. It's a psychedelic compound that's currently a Schedule I drug and primarily acts on serotonin receptors. It's a 5-HT2A agonist and works throughout the brain to create pretty wide-ranging effects, which I'll speak to in just a moment. It was given as a drug or compound a breakthrough designation from the FDA in 2018, breakthrough designation for depression, meaning that the FDA's identified it as a potentially useful substance. It still doesn't have FDA approval, but it's been used for what seem to be thousands of years by indigenous cultures for various healing practices and life milestones. And it seems to be a compelling avenue for us to treat depression. And let me share a little bit of what we've been doing. So what it does and how it works, it's still really, we're all on the learning curve about this, but there are various perspectives. There's a psychodynamic perspective that has come out of the 1950s and 1960s, that it helps to lower defenses. It amplifies the unconscious mind and opens us to windows within ourselves that we may not be able to see outside of these altered states of consciousness, and really provides valuable therapeutic content in a way that for participants, patients, feels like a waking dream. In the cognitive behavioral perspective and somewhat of a neural perspective, we see increases in cognitive flexibility, opportunities for patients in time, in the sessions themselves, to have modified thoughts, and for that to have some durability after the effects have worn off. Allows for what we see as an easier approach of avoided thoughts and emotions. And that's a big kind of core element of what we're doing in CBT generally, looking for individuals to approach what they might commonly avoid if they're avoiding things that would be helpful for them. and greater openness to new experiences. As I was mentioning earlier, it seems to act all over the brain, decreasing functional connectivity between the hippocampus and default mode network, reducing connectivity between prefrontal cortex and amygdala. In a certain way, frankly, in an oversimplified way, there's a certain sense of it allowing for kind of resetting of what are commonly strongly wired or connected networks, and to create a certain neuronal entropy, a kind of randomness or opportunity for networks that don't normally connect to one another to connect. And this can, in various ways, be why there are new types of thoughts that are created, emotions that are elicited that may not commonly be felt, and for various folks, they describe creativity and other experiences that are not their norm. And one of them, as one of our collaborators and mentors has mentioned, is describing it as an existential medicine, that it allows for creating certain perspectives about life and value, what's meaningful to participants, in a way that gets beyond particular diagnoses or particular difficulties, and can help create a certain zoomed out lens of life and of why we are here and what this is about. So the psychedelic assisted therapy model involves three main sections. There's the preparation, there's the medicine sessions themselves, and then there's the integration. And this was developed in the 50s. This is a westernized model of what's been done for millennia. And overall, the preparation sessions are meant to provide some education about what the experience is like, ways to help improve or optimize the mindset for going into the experience and for managing the experience. And then they have all day, for these large dose administrations, all day medicine or drug sessions. And then following those sessions, those medicine sessions, we work to integrate what the experiences were, how to make sense of it, and how to carry those insights or experiences, those thoughts and feelings into their day-to-day life. To give you a sense of what it looks like, we have our session administration room pictured on the left. This has become a popular picture of the Johns Hopkins group. On the right here is at UCSF. And these are 6 to 8 hour rooms that are used for 6 to 8 hours. We ask the participant to lay down, to wear eye shades and have headphones on, and to have an internal experience. The goal, isn't to be making sense of it in the moment. The goal isn't to be engaging in a back and forth dialogue or therapeutic session in these high dose sessions with the clinicians. We do have, as required by the FDA, 2 therapists, clinicians that are sitting with the participant to provide support if needed, but with the goal being to have an internal experience throughout the session. And then the integration typically has been a couple, 2 to 3 hours, led by the participant, led by the patient. So from the therapist or clinician perspective, it's typically been non-directive and unstructured. There's a review of the psychedelic experience, identify what was learned, and how this can be used. And it calls from various traditions and theoretical orientations. Now, what we found as we were looking into this around COVID, many folks probably were, it was a very popular time as findings, really exciting scientific findings were released. There were also various pop science documentaries that were very popular, and it just caught a lot of folks' attention, including our labs at UCLA. And we were, as psychologists, very interested in knowing what exactly is happening in the psychotherapy, and ultimately how could it be optimized. And we identified some significant limitations. For one, these integration protocols had not been empirically tested. We couldn't find, and they don't seem to be manualized or easily disseminable. By virtue of them being non-directive and unstructured, we don't know what's happening. We also can't easily measure it from a research perspective. And so to have these wide-ranging practices when we have really in the last 50 or so years had notable advances in psychosocial treatments to be able to pair it with what is an evidence-based treatment that is manualized, and a way for us to be able to test and know what's happening in the therapy. We felt it to be a useful addition to what seems to be a very profound and meaningful drug experience, that it could be optimized by using something like a cognitive behavioral therapy. There's a robust evidence for cognitive behavioral therapy and improving symptoms and reducing the amount of time to relapse, or sorry, increasing the amount of time, creating durability of symptom improvement. There's a manual for us to be able to know what we're delivering, to deliver reliably and also disseminate the treatment. There's proposed mechanisms of change. So as I was mentioning earlier, we can hypothesize what's happening. We can then test. Are we doing what we're expecting to be doing? And is that what's having the expected effect on outcomes? And it's been proposed by others to have, to essentially be the default therapeutic mode or model by being something that is theoretically oriented and essentially can be falsifiable, whereas some of these other modalities are very hard to know what's happening and take particular kinds of stances that may not be easily disputable. So in the last couple years, we've been conducting a pilot trial of our psilocybin-assisted cognitive behavioral therapy. Again, this is for adults with major depression, seeking to determine its feasibility, safety, and acceptability. We've sought to refine and optimize it, and I'll share a bit about that as well. And then just, I think today actually we'll have the final data point for our 7-month study. We have our data here today over the treatment period that I'll be able to share, and we're seeking to also explore some of the treatment targets and moderators and mediators of outcomes. So what the treatment looks like is 12 therapy sessions that surround 2 medication sessions. We start with preparation over 3 sessions, then we have what's considered a moderate dose, 10 milligrams of psilocybin. We really launch into the CBT after that, and then have a second dose of psilocybin, a large dose, 25 milligrams, and continue with the CBT skill practices over what's a 4-month treatment, and then have a 3-month follow-up. In this pilot, we've enrolled 16 participants, average age of 43, and have found really strong numbers of retention and completion. So a little under 94% of our participants have completed the full PA-CBT protocol that I just showed you before, and 100% completed the CBT. There's one participant for an unrelated medical event who was withdrawn from the second psilocybin session. The acceptability was rated very high. We were quite impressed to see how high the satisfaction was from our participants, 3.9 out of 4. Most of our participants rated the CBT sessions to be adequate in their number. There were a handful that felt that they could have wanted or benefited from more CBT sessions, and one participant who felt that we gave them too many. Overall, the satisfaction with the CBT portion was also high, and importantly, the combination understanding, and this is something that is still unclear in the field, is this a treatment that can pair well with psilocybin? Our participants seem to think so. 4.8 out of 5 was their rating of satisfaction with the pairing. To give you a sense of what the data look like, we saw very strong antidepressant effects. This is something that I should qualify as just an open trial. This could have been potentially the effect of time, but we do see very strong improvements in depression over the course of the treatment, both in what was rated by the participants here as their depressive symptoms, and here from baseline to post-treatment as rated by our study assessor. We also, these are ratings on the right here by our study assessors of global functioning and their clinical psychiatric severity, saw significant improvements. So these were really impressive outcomes for us to be able to see from this treatment. And frankly, what seems to be, to me, more impressive than those graphs are the quotes and the stories that the participants shared with us, really identifying this treatment as something that helped them as an important combined approach. That some folks had tried psilocybin previously, didn't have the opportunity or ability to make sense of some of the experiences and to be able to implement them in their life in a way that felt as meaningful as what they were able to do with us. And just the reverse as well, individuals who had CBT before or some amount of therapy and really weren't able to what they might describe as link their thoughts with their feelings or ultimately be able to have the rubber hit the road in the way that we were able to do with some of our patients, really seeing it as a successful and important treatment, and the link of the two to be really synergistic. A few things that they mentioned to that we heard from participants and also from our clinicians, refinement suggestions. There was a suggestion to incorporate some CBT into the preparation, so to provide some psychoeducation of depression and principles of CBT up front. But an important thing that we found was actually not to goal set until we had the first medication or drug session. Reason for that is because there were times when someone would start on a particular path or feel like they had a sense of what a good goal might be, and then that would be significantly altered by their psilocybin experience, that it would help them through the psilocybin experience be able to align with what they really felt that they valued and wanted to prioritize in their life. An example of that was an individual who in LA was very interested and focused on getting his movie script accepted by a large studio and was really wanting to seek a certain amount of fortune and fame that he came to LA for. And that was his goal, to be able to shop it around and find a way to be successful. And if only he did that, his depression would be better. That was his goal at the outset of the treatment. And through the medication sessions, he really identified or shifted his value to feel like it was more about practicing the art that was going to be what would lead to his benefit if he could immerse himself in what got him excited about the movie industry and writing, and if he could focus on his individual satisfaction as opposed to external rewards like money or fame, that would be much more satisfying and impactful for his mood. We also got suggestions to incorporate more acceptance-based principles and practices, such as mindfulness-based practices or ACT practices. We're taking those suggestions and putting them into practice. Oh, I'm sorry, let me take one step back. So just as a quick recap, the treatment was well liked and led to quite significant psychiatric and functional outcomes. And that feedback was incorporated into what is now a randomized trial. This is a relatively complicated diagram, but essentially on top we have our PA-CBT, or psilocybin-assisted CBT on top, and then on bottom here is the treatment that's kind of the standard in the field. It incorporates the standard preparation, and then there's a singular check-in or two after these med sessions, and really for us to be able to determine, is the increased therapy and the CBT components, do they provide additional value to the participants as they are rating the acceptability of the treatment? Does it provide additional value in terms of what we see in their outcomes, their depressive symptoms and functioning? And for us to kind of dig into what are the reasons for why these changes are occurring, if they are more durably in one treatment than another. Is it that we're seeing that there are greater behavioral and cognitive changes as a result to the CBT? So that study is ongoing. We're also awaiting NIH review to examine a group-based version of this treatment. There would be interesting work to be done from an imaging perspective for us to see in the brain what's happening neurally as individuals are undergoing psilocybin alone versus psilocybin with psychotherapy, or even psychotherapy versus psilocybin plus psychotherapy. We also have an MDMA trial. It's a separate psychedelic or psychedelic adjacent drug or medication that we'll be testing in young adults with treatment-resistant PTSD. Want to acknowledge our large team of investigators, coordinators, research assistants, and many trainees that have come through our program to help with the groups and various projects. Really could not be done without the great team that we have. And with that, I leave it to the group, or Jeff, any questions or for us to discuss?
Well, thank you, first of all, Marc, for the work that you're doing and for an excellent presentation that really explains it. It's fascinating, the two very different adjuncts or additions to talk therapy that you discussed with us, both very interesting and important. I guess from your perspective, given all of the, as you mentioned, all of the interest in the media about using these medications as an assistance for therapy, what's your sense of where it's going to go over the next few years?
Yeah. My sense is that where it's going to go is to the tech space, in large part because we do a good job of research, but we don't do a great job. We're not developers, coders, we're not tech people, and it's very hard to create a product that is up to date and maintains its kind of appeal like the tech products do. And so I just think that they're going to be much more equipped to be able to create a product that's engaging. And even if we have all of the evidence-based skills in our product, if it isn't engaging, it won't work. And so I think it will likely need to come from, and this might be ideal, I don't know how this happens exactly, but some partnership with whatever tech or health company is interested in this space, working with researchers, but with them leading the charge to provide the tech structure and support.
I thought one interesting point you made was an area that people weren't as happy about was monitoring the symptoms. And I think we as a profession have, thought the idea of doing that might be very, very helpful over time. What's your sense of that issue in terms of using the app?
Yeah, and that was even a much more pared down version of an app that we had created in the family-focused therapy that I was just briefly mentioning, that had really a lot of different assessment pieces to it. And we, both as researchers and clinicians, are interested in getting updates on symptoms. And it seems like, and the parents that were in the group as well, they seemed to find more value than the teens did in monitoring their teen symptoms. But it seems to be something that is somewhat off-putting for them to be continually monitoring, although it does seem to have value. But it also makes me wonder how necessary or important it is when that may not be what they're focused on. There might be certain problem areas of functioning, social relationships, school, whatever it might be, that could be more interesting or engaging for them and also matter more to them, which could still be useful for us. Maybe not so important psychiatrically, but certainly psychologically when we're thinking of intervening psychosocially as a way to still get an update of how things are going without it needing to be symptom and DSM focused.
In some ways, what we might be thinking of as symptoms aren't as important to the individual living with the condition as other aspects of their life, and maybe measuring those aspects would be more engaging and, in fact, more useful to the person and to the clinicians.
I think so, and it would be an interesting, I think that's just an interesting empirical question too, both for us and for the participants or patients. What gives us more useful information? Symptoms certainly provide value, but can we get just as far or farther in certain ways to know, like I was mentioning in the clinician portal, about the fight that they had, the struggles that they have interpersonally, the struggles that they have academically, struggles that are relevant to them and might in some ways be underlying their mood or psychiatric difficulties, when the symptoms are potentially more at the surface or just consequential.
Right. Well, I think that to me, an important take-home message for people who are listening and have a loved one with a youth with one of these conditions, or the person themselves, is really better to have the family working together in order to maximize the level of functioning and the outcomes for their loved one. And this is an important piece of the puzzle to doing that.
Absolutely. It's something that unfortunately doesn't seem as common as we would want it to be, but to the extent that we could get more clinicians too to provide these family treatments in whatever way makes sense to the family and is feasible for them as clinicians, but to be able to extend beyond symptoms and beyond the individual to get a more full picture of the patient and the life around them just seems to be so much more impactful, or at least an important piece of the therapeutic process. Doesn't mean that working with the individual isn't important. It certainly provides a lot of value, but it also is important and provides value to get around, to build out beyond just the participant or patient.
Yep, absolutely. Let me shift gears as you did to the psychedelics. Part of what has been, a question in the science is it the psychedelic experience? Is it something that's happening in the brain? What, in terms of connections, do you need to have the psychedelic experience to have the therapeutic benefits? I'm curious what you're seeing in the work that you're doing with regards to this.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts in this treatment. There's clearly very profound neural effects. There are strong emotional and visual effects too, and I'll describe that in a second. But there's also the music component that I was mentioning. There's the therapy around it. There's so many different parts that we need to unpack, and we're just really getting started with it. But to the point of, can we have the effect without the trip? Is a common kind of question, or something that's becoming of greater interest in the field. I'm skeptical of that. I see a lot of what's happening in this visual experience as folks are close-eyed and going on an internal journey, like a waking dream, where they have experiences that are very hard to put into words. It might be experiences that help connect them to a part of themselves as they are seeing or interacting with themselves. It might be an interaction with somebody else. It might be journeying to the cosmos, or something that feels like a higher place, and that these various experiences can be impactful, that I couldn't imagine how that would happen without the experience. Similarly, positive emotions that are elicited during the experience. Positive emotions are so commonly hard for people to share, or to list. I think happiness is maybe people can list a couple, but there's a wide array of positive emotions that commonly are elicited: appreciation, gratitude, connection to others, in addition to sometimes happiness and joy. And it doesn't mean that this happens all the time, and it doesn't mean it's the entire 6 or 8 hours, but that these positive emotions and the ability to sit in that and experience some of what they're experiencing as they're journeying essentially just seems so valuable for someone, especially in the context of depression, who doesn't always feel like they themselves have value, that they themselves are connected, that there's much to appreciate in life. And it just seems to me like there might be, of course, some value in the trip with, or the drug without the trip, but that these experiences are so important that I just couldn't imagine it being as effective without it.
Well, let me take this time to say thank you, Marc, for joining us and for the work that you're doing. And I'm looking forward to getting an update in the not too distant future of where this work goes.
That sounds great. Thank you very much for having me.
And I want to ask people who are in our audience to consider making a donation to BBRF. 100% of every dollar donated for research is invested in our research grants. We're able to do this because our operating expenses are covered by separate foundation grants. This means that if you donate $1 for research, that dollar goes directly to the scientist. To make a gift, please visit our website, bbrfoundation.org, or call us at 1-800-829-8289. This webinar has been recorded. If you missed any portion or would like to share it, please visit the events and webinar page on our website. And please join us again on September 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time when Dr. Danella Hofferman, Associate Professor of Psychiatry at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, will present Tracking Mood Instability and Bipolar Disorder, Advances in Neuroimaging and Digital Monitoring. Thank you, and remember, together we can dramatically improve the lives of those living with mental illness and enable more people to live full, happy, and productive lives. Take care.